Welcome to Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn group. And I wanted to talk to you today on a very special edition of Ask the Expert because we all know this person sitting beside me here. And I have a very special episode where we talk about the corporate transition and a special edition with Bruce Morton, someone that we all know very well in this industry and has had a great career in the industry on the corporate side, working for one of the largest MSPs and human capital companies in the world. And now he's looking at his next transition to his next adventure and the consulting world. So, Bruce, thank you for coming on the show and having a conversation about this really important topic, the transition from the traditional corporate world that we all grew up in to the next adventures.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, thanks for those kind words. Perhaps we should stop now. But no, really looking forward to the conversation. And yeah, hopefully we can share some nuggets for folks that are, at some point in their career going to get to the same point.
Oh, no, it's awesome. So, as always, we use AI, and the what spit out was the corporate transition, Bruce Morton's leap beyond corporate. So, it's almost like you have a Superman cape and you're taking off to the next adventure. So, you know, transitioning is always somewhat, you know, of a psychological adventure too, right?
Mhm.
So part of this is understanding, when you're ready to transition out of corporate and into more, flexible work scenarios. So, it's a very interesting scenario where you have to think about retirement. And everybody always does from when you start working to now, but how do you prepare for that? And when did you know you were ready to retire?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it took a few years and it was different, I guess, different points. But the first one was COVID, funnily enough. That so I met my wife, we were just getting to our 10th wedding anniversary. 15 years ago we met. And that's when I'd just come to the US from Sydney, Australia. Met her the first day I got here. That's for another podcast. But anyway, and then we spent a good number of years where we'd only see each other at weekends. So my life then was at 4:30 on a Monday morning, a car would pick me up. They'd take me to some airport somewhere. I'd go somewhere and I'd get back about 10:30 on a Friday night. It's been somewhere in the world or somewhere in the States. There's 51 weeks of the year I was traveling. So we had a great time. I was a smiley, happy boyfriend. We hung out, we had dinner, we had date, and I'd go again. And then COVID hit. And both of us were like, whoa, I wonder if I'm going to like them. And for the first time ever, I saw her having to get her kids up in the morning and force them out the door to go to school and get them to bed at night. And we'd never seen that part of it. Now, good news is, and it all worked out, and we actually, our love deepened. But it gave us a bit of a flavor of, oh, this is what it's like living together. So as I was then thinking about a few years hence, back in, well, we've been here 3 years now. So in 2022, we started saying, okay, with an impending, if I do retire and if I do get out of the corporate world, where do we want to be when I start taking my stock plan? And then we said the easiest way is where don't we want to be? The number one
Yeah.
was we don't want to be in New Canaan, Connecticut, where we was paying 8.9% state tax. So that got us thinking about let's start moving. So we looked at all of the non-state tax states and we had great fun actually. Weekends, Airbnb, getting to see the country where we might want to live.
Oh,
It was phenomenal. And then fortunately, my wife was on Google Earth one day looking at a certain part of Florida, in the Tampa area, and saw this big green mass of nature reserves. Like, what the heck's that? She zoomed in and started reading about manatees and everything else and the Great American Bird Trail. And we said, that's where we should live when we retire. And that was the catalyst for saying, oh, so we're actually talking about retirement then, huh? And that's when I started thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a long answer, but that's how it worked. And then that was so when I hit 64 in June, my 64th birthday, I said to my boss, President Allegis, Steve Schumacher, Steve, just to let you know, 12 months from today, I'm going to be 65 and I'm going to retire. And you can guess what his response was. No, you're not. I
That
said, yeah,
is,
I am. And
that's
he
part
sort of
of it.
thought I was half joking, and we went along with that for a little bit in denial. And then he me into finishing the end of the year. And that's why I finished 31st December 2024. So that's how we got to that point.
Yeah, well, and it's amazing that transition and that thought and how, thoughtful it was in building the relationship outside of work is
Right.
right that helped with that decision.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a fun transition too, because looking at locations where you want to
Yeah.
live is an adventure in itself, which kind
Absolutely.
of gets you into the mindset of, okay, it's about lifestyle as much as the other side of things, right?
Yeah.
And so uh, it's an interesting transition into that mindset. Did
Yeah. And I think because you have a different um, view of that, because when you're working 6, 7 days a week, it sort of doesn't matter where you live, you know.
yeah.
And then when you think, well, actually, no, I'm going to be spending a lot of hours in that place, then it becomes more important,
Oh
And
yeah, for
I
sure.
love, I'm not a good golfer, but I love golf. Being able to play golf 12 months a year is one of the criteria.
For sure. And that kind of leads into my next question was, how did you plan for this too? Because there's that whole side of that is there's a psychology side, but then it's the lifestyle side, and then it's also the financial side, of course,
Yeah.
a lot of things to think about. What did you think about when you were looking at this transition? And it was kind of interesting because you kind of had a 2-year period that you were
Right.
thinking about it, and then you're kind of making the decisions and you've planned for it. What did you think about in and plan for?
Yeah, I think the number one decision was I'm not going to just stop work. I started calling it retirement, and pretty quickly I shifted that to semi-retirement, as we say here.
Yep.
Um, and one of my uh, prerequisites for that is it's funny coming from England. In England, nobody puts the TV on until about 6 p.m. at night. So others might do it at 5:30, but they have, oh, it's 5:30, let's put the TV on, they sit down and watch it. What I learned when I came to the US 15 years ago is the TV's on all the time. It's just there in the background. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I am not going to be a guy that sits watching daytime TV ever. I'm never going to be that person. Please, if I do, take me out and do something to me. So I thought, okay, well, that's a good starting point. I don't want to do that. So what do I want to do? And I thought, well, actually, if I could work 10 days a month or equivalent of, that would be great. It'll allow me to do some hobbies, but it'll also allow me to stay very present in this industry that I've invested 45 years in and I absolutely love and am obsessed with. And I don't want to miss out on that. I've got a big fear of missing out there. I don't want any innovation going on unless I'm involved with it. So how do I keep one foot in the market and do it? So that's where I've got to. And so my plan that I'm going through right now is to build a relationship as an advisor with less than a handful of clients and just do a couple of days a month with them each. And then I'll, sort of be able to shut shop from a BD perspective.
Yeah, it's a
And
neat
that's it's
transition.
been that as well. It's been great fun because I'm fortunate enough to have been in the industry so long. I know who I want to work with is probably the best way of saying that.
Yeah, you've already done the interviews and based on your experiences from the past,
Yeah.
who are the good people, who are not, and some of the innovators that will be interesting to work with
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah, and where I can really add value and
Yeah.
I don't want to do it for the sake of it. I genuinely, love seeing success and love being part of change.
Yeah. Well, you have been part of change all the
Right.
way through your career. And it is amazing, right? When you say, okay, what am I going to do now? We all turn back to this wacky world of the contingent workforce
Yeah.
management space that we've helped create and want to continue to be part of it. But the heavy lifting of the day to day maybe have somebody else do that, and but use your experiences to create impact. And I
Right.
think that impact is really important because, you know, if you spent time in this industry, we know where there's the areas for improvement, let's say,
Right.
and you want to focus on those with the companies that are innovating in the space, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I
very
think that
cool.
also what got me ready for, I hadn't thought about this before, but just you put a thought in my mind there that I'd share that what helped me getting ready for this is elite AGS approach to allowing me to almost act, although I wasn't doing 10 days a month, I was definitely doing 25 plus probably, but I was in a position, part of the senior leadership team on the board, but had no direct reports. And that's unusual for our industry.
Yeah.
Normally you climb the ladder by having building empires and having more and more people underneath you. But AGS saw and I guess helped them see the value in somebody in my role as head of strategy. I had to have the freedom to think outside the box. And I obviously working with all my colleagues inside the organization, but I was almost acting like a strategic advisor, although I was an employee. So I hadn't thought about that before, but I think that definitely helped with the transition.
Yeah, in a big way, and then give you kind of a foundation for what's next too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because you were always looking at what's out there in the market and
right.
where things are going and the trends that are going on. And, as a strategic advisor and as a consultant, as you transition, it's probably very similar, right?
Yeah,
You, companies will want that curiosity, that knowledge of how the industry works
right.
to help them build the next products or help change the industry as well. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And I heard the boundaries that you have started to set too. Like as you transition to this, we talk about the lifestyle balance that's
Mhm.
needed, and I heard the 10-day rule, and
Yeah,
I know that will probably be a little flexible, give
yeah.
or take, but I think it's important to set boundaries because, as you get back into it, this is an industry that if you're passionate about it can then suck you back in and get you
Oh,
consumed all your hours,
yeah.
and then that balance of life and work is kind of tilted the wrong way and wasn't what you expected. So are some of those boundaries, I heard the 10 days of work, but
Yeah.
are there other boundaries that you've talked about with potential clients?
I think that having that flexibility so that it's, it 24 days a year rather than 2 days a month is better because then you can, if I want to take a month out, I can take a month out. So just having that flexibility and, nobody is keeping a taxi meter here. We're not on the clock, logging hours. Thank you very much. So it's more of an agreement than anything else. I
Yeah.
was yesterday was Sunday and I was online for 4 hours and I don't consider it to be work. It's stuff I want to do, so I think if you're enjoying it, it doesn't work. So I think having that flexibility and just being adults about it will certainly help. But one thing I did do, and we made a decision about last year, was saying, okay, if I'm going to finish in December, roll into this new world, we better mark the occasion somehow.
Yeah.
So my wife and I are both very passionate about India and the people of India. So we went to India for a month.
Yeah.
And we had 10 days in a wellness retreat. 5 days of those was a whole detox. That's one for another podcast.
Yeah.
And then did some sightseeing. And it was just two things. One, it was phenomenal to have a month off, first time ever. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But the other thing was so I did I had one conference call on the second day I was there at 7 o'clock in the morning. But apart from that, I deliberately didn't put anything on my calendar.
Yep.
And I worked out it was the first time in 35 years that I'd had a vacation when I wasn't on conference calls every day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's probably why I've been through three marriages. But number three is great, and she's very thoughtful about it. But it was incredible. I'm like, wow, well, what was I doing? Now you do it because it needs to be done, and you're passionate, and you want to be involved in things. But boy, those people that can actually shut down during a vacation and not do get on calls, hats off to them. Highly recommended. But I found out a bit too late, just so I was retired or I'm retired. But
It is fascinating though, and one, you're right. You should always mark um, big milestones
yeah,
with a celebration or
right.
something special, and then that and you actually did detox. You did some of those, but that whole detoxation
Yeah,
that you say, hey, listen, I have nothing on my calendar. I'm not going to take calls. I want to really be mindful about this transition so that I'm coming in with a clear mind and I've
yep,
erased some of the past patterns that you get sucked back into, right? So
right.
it was that's a neat way to transition, not only to mark the milestone and enjoy it and celebrate the situation, but also to make the transition more a clean one as
Yeah,
well as you move
right.
forward. So it's cool. You know, there's the why that people are often struggling with too. Like, why retire, right? And so I think you've answered the question with how you've now reframed it, semi, but not totally. But
Yeah.
what was some of the motivations to the why?
Yeah, I think that the my wife and I talked about this a lot, and we both love travel, and I've traveled a hell of a lot with through work, and
Yeah,
she's taken the opportunity to travel when she can. But now we get to do that together, truly do that together. So that's our biggest motivation is, we have 7 children between us, 4 of them in the States, 3 in the UK. So there's lots of places we can go and visit with our children,
yeah,
and that's what we want to do. We want to do it while we're still young enough and energetic enough to actually enjoy it.
yeah,
At some point, probably won't want to go to an airport, in 70s, whatever the age may be. So we want to do that. And thankfully, we're living in a time when, I mean, when I was a kid and looking at somebody that was 65, they were very old. I think that's my
yeah,
memory's distorted. And now we're all pretty young in our 60s.
yeah,
So, especially living in Florida, we're probably the youngest people here. But anyway, um, but we just said, no, let's go and do these things we talked about. Let's go and do them now and tick them off while we're still going to enjoy it and be very energetic about it. So that was a big motivator to do it now rather than do another 5 years, which I
yeah.
could easily have carried on working for that long, no or longer. So it was a very conscious effort of like, no, let's now's our time.
Yeah. And it makes total sense because you always, when you are working, you're always longing for retirement or working towards that and envisioning what that will like. And then as you get closer to it, sometimes you're like, well, maybe what I want
Yeah,
to and try to
yeah,
balance it, but to be definite about the vision board of what that looked like and it's motivating,
yeah.
right?
And be
Especially
ready. The honeydew list has got longer, I can tell you.
that is when you're not on the plane and you're
Yes,
around the
exactly.
house, you got
Yeah.
to do your part, Bruce.
And
So,
I love the phrase, oh, when you get a chance, that means you better put your shoes on and go and do it now.
looks like you're transitioning well into being around the
Yes.
house more.
Yeah.
So, how are you enjoying it so far?
Love it. Love it. We've unfortunately we got hit very badly where we moved to with the hurricanes. So there is enough work for me to still be doing from the last one. But I do enjoy manual labor and DIY as we call it in the UK. So, I'm enjoying that. Enjoying being able to play golf twice a week instead of once. And yeah, and just you know, planning a days around things that we want to do and go away for a long weekend or something like that. And yeah, it's working really well.
So, when we look at moving into the consulting realm, which you have set up a business and you've
Yep.
started into that. And we won't get into the technicalities of setting up a business, but you've really been mindful and thoughtful and intentional with this transition
Yep.
from the corporate world into more of a balanced lifestyle, but still working role. And so, what are your plans now?
Yes, I'm working with some organizations already, and it's a mix of strategic advice in terms of where's the market going, what businesses should they be in, where should they be investing most of their time, what is the go-to-market strategy, what is the world of work going to look like,
Yeah,
crystal ball type stuff. Are we backing the right horses? What does a 3-year exit plan look like? There's a lot of that going on, whether that be to sell or IPO, whatever that may be, or how do we raise money? So it's a mix of all of that, really,
yeah,
loosely termed under strategic advice. I'm doing some executive coaching, some team coaching. I love the dynamics of senior
yeah,
leadership teams and getting them to think as one. And it's a bit of a soapbox, I guess, as well as a passion of mine that when you think about a leadership team, does everybody realize they're not, if they're head of BD, they're not there just representing BD. They've got another job now, which is to help them and lead that company.
yeah,
And I think a lot of organizations really struggle. They have these meetings, but everybody's stuck in their own silo. The finance guy will glaze over until somebody mentions spreadsheet. Oh, yeah, okay, let me have a view on
yeah.
that. Oh, they're talking about BD.
Forecasts.
They're talking about
Yeah,
BD now. Now I'll think about what I'm having for dinner tonight. And I mean, perhaps I'm exaggerating, perhaps I'm not. But the point being is there's so much value in an organization acting as one in that really takes them forward. And I've done a lot of that, so I think I'm pretty good at it. But it's also I think it's an incredibly important thing for organizations to be able to do.
well, yeah, and quite honestly, with the cycles that we've been in, there has been a lot of, and it's not only demographic cycles where leadership is retiring or
Yep.
semi-retiring or moving on, but we're also in economic cycles where you've had to make some tough decisions. And often the highest salaries or the savings are in that kind of more senior roles. And you've seen some leadership gaps or someone maybe prematurely being brought into leadership. And so it's really important to build that knowledge and be able to share past experiences
Right.
to help accelerate their leadership skills, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think there is a lot of to be said around and needed in the coaching realms with that
Yeah, and I think
as we
when
transition.
yeah, and especially when the industry is changing so much, and the industry is always in change, of course, always in flux. But with everything going on in the world right now, I do truly believe that we are at a crossroads here, and there will be the haves and the have-nots. Particularly, we've seen a number of staffing companies over the last decade move more and more into services. Well, they're benefiting from that now.
Yeah,
The staffing market in North America is stagnant at best. I think it's going to be down a bit this year compared to last, but we've seen the growth in services. We've
yeah,
seen the massive growth in the use of freelancers, and companies that are truly embracing that and getting their arms around it instead of saying, "Oh, we don't use freelancers." Well, yes, you do. But I think our industry is still on a bit of a learning curve in terms of educating those enterprises to really be able to think differently about how they get work done.
yeah,
And people talk so much about AI, and I put a post out last week and saying, if you want to just use it. Stop freaking talking about it.
yeah,
It drives me crazy. You can't go to anywhere, any conference without, half the agenda being about AI. Well, yeah, but who's actually using it? Just get on with it. The
yeah,
AI has passed us so far now in the last 12 months because we've all been, I like to use the analogy where it's like the internet has landed in a medieval town and people are just prodding it, thinking, what is this thing? So I think those things that's where, coming back to your point, leaders need to lead right now and be the role models and embrace this stuff. This isn't somebody else's job, and they need to be all in on it.
yeah. And that kind of leads you've touched on it, the future of work and the trends that we're seeing, and there's the leadership side of it, but then there's just where things are going, right,
Yeah.
in the market. And you've always been at the leading edge of that. And, you know, like you said, that transition to services where it's not always pure fixed price, but it's more outcome based
Yep.
is very appealing, right? It's very appealing to organizations where, it's predictable.
Yep.
In the world of uncertainty, predictability people move towards, right? Because then they know this is my budget, this is what it's going to cost, and this is when it's going to
Absolutely.
get done, give
Yep.
or take, right?
Yep.
But that predictability is what's pushing the envelope. And then, of course, the pandemic did push the remote work. And then when you look at remote work and, you know, our generation becoming freelancers and fractional executives and consultants, and then the geographic, where you can find the skills where it might be rare skills in North America, but if you find a pocket over here and the prices differential is better, it enables you to use freelancers through the platforms. Like,
Yep.
what else are you seeing in the market, or do you want to elaborate on some of those trends?
I think that I mean this is true in the developed world, but let's talk about North America in particular. I think that the the move of organizations offshoring the high-end skills is, to me, the most important thing that, for some reason, the industry has its head in the sand over. You only need to Google GCC opening today, and you'll find out what's happening. I mean, every single day, I get all those feeds come in from various points. Like yesterday, Friday was McDonald's turn. 3,000 seater R&D high-end app development in Hyderabad. Every
Yeah,
single day, a new GCC opens with thousands of people in. All of that work that's being done now in India, that's only one country example, used to be done in North America.
yeah,
And India's only one of those examples, but it's a good one. There are millions of people, millions of jobs now being done that used to be done onshore, high end. One of the reasons for that is we're just not producing enough computer science grads here in the
yeah,
US. We're like 85,000 a year. IT engineering in India is like 1.3 million. So you look at the top 10 largest technology firms in the world, and the CEOs are of Indian descent.
yeah,
So this is where the world's moving there, and for some reason, people aren't waking up to it. Now, alongside that, you've got the AI replacing jobs. So I think that here in North America, as from a staffing industry lens, you've got to start thinking differently. Doing it the way you've always done it will not work. You cannot, the old adage, oh, you're making 100 calls today, make 120. It won't make any difference. The jobs aren't there.
yeah,
There are fewer jobs for more competitors that you're fighting over. That's going to have a mark of a margin impact, obviously. And then the last piece I'll make, which let's call it the Doge effect,
yeah,
is every CEO on the planet now must be under pressure saying, hang on a minute, if we can take 70% of the people out of that, fill the gap, why can't we do that?
yeah,
Now, we all know that we can, there's some nonsense going on with some of those numbers, but it almost doesn't matter because it's just become the lexicon of you can get work done with fewer people.
yes,
Now, one of the ways of getting around that is to reduce your fixed costs and still employ people on outcome, and you're
yeah,
sort of hiding it a bit. So I think that from the contingent world, there's probably some good news in there somewhere.
yeah,
But if you see what's happening to the big four right now, the
yeah,
laser light that's on them, how much the government's spending, they're like, what are we doing now? How many millions for doing what? That starts being deconstructed. And all of a sudden, you get another raise of those freelancers that you used to be able to only get to them via a big four or big 10.
yeah.
Now, as your point, they become fractional. And that's going to save us some money. So all of that's going on right now. And I think the smart organizations in our world will start seeing some of that, join the dots on that, and create compelling solutions for their clients
Yeah.
that will help them answer those challenges.
You've heard it here first, folks. The World According to Bruce Morton. And actually, it's where I'm very much aligned with your thoughts on that as well. This has been an amazing time, Bruce. Thank you for taking the time. I know, we've been at different airports and on conferences together, and I really appreciate it.
Hey, great to see you, Jeff, as always. I'll see you at a bar somewhere.
You got it.
Cheers. Have a great day.
Cheers.